Welcome to the Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor, and I'm also a family business advisor. In this show, we'll be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family business, this podcast is for you. So today my guest is Rebekah Streeter Rad, who is a repeat guest. So welcome back. So Rebekah was on in March to talk about her family business journey. And we didn't have time really to dive into another business that was spun off out of, different reasons that we're going to get into. So welcome back, Rebekah.
Thank you for having me back. Lovely to chat again.
Yeah, you know what? We just ran out of time. Our podcasts are so short. We didn't really get a chance to dig into the new business that sort of came out of certain situations that we'll get into. But just for our listeners who haven't listened to the other episode, and by the way, if you haven't, go back and listen to it, is describe very quickly the family business that you were or still are involved in before you created this new venture sort of in the middle of all this.
So the original family business is in childcare. So since I was 5 years old, we have had a preschool, which morphed into a private school, before and after school center, and a daycare. And so we currently still have a daycare, which services 150 children on 5 acres of land just outside of Halifax in Nova Scotia. And we run toddler to pre-primary, junior primary, and before and after school up to grade 6 and 7.
Yeah. So if you want to hear more about that, go back and listen to Rebekah's previous podcast and her whole family journey. But I want to sort of dive into, in the middle of working with your family in this family business, you started a new business. So tell me a little bit about how that new business came up, because clearly you're busy. You're a mom, you're working a family business, you got things going on, and all of a sudden you start another business in the middle of this. So tell me how that even transpired.
Well, one, I think it just runs in the family, since there's 4 businesses between me and my parents alone, and we all run all of them together. But when I had kids 10 years ago, when I had my daughter, at the time I was still teaching full-time at the private school. I taught all of the creative arts, dance, music, drama, and didn't want to teach anymore. And so I decided to step back from that and ended up opening a bed and breakfast with my husband. And so we ran the first 5-star property in Nova Scotia. We had 10 bedrooms, a gym, a sauna, a steam room, and really, really enjoyed creating those experiences for my guests. We had a lot of European guests and people that would come in. We eventually opened a second location, rented out multiple apartments on Airbnb, opened a restaurant, and we're going to open a spa as well. And I burnt myself out.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Right. Yeah. We were just heading there. But also I was in a narcissistically abusive relationship and dealing with 3 kids under 6, that relationship, and multiple businesses, and not being allowed to take time off, one, by myself, because I felt lazy if I did that, and 2, by my partner, who was just like, no, we need to bring in more money. We can never shut down. We can never take a break. I completely burnt out my body. Mentally, I was exhausted. I finally did leave that relationship and take a break. And I found that as soon as I felt safe again, my body was like, okay, it's safe to shut down because you need to rest. Mm-hmm. And I had to take about 2 years off. And during that period, one of the bed and breakfasts that we formerly had came up for sale, and I was going to buy that with my parents for something to do as I was starting to feel better. COVID hit.
Oh, yes, the dreaded COVID.
And luckily the bank was like, we're going to see. We're just going to wait on this a little bit, which was probably the best thing. And while I was waiting for the bank to see what they were going to do, I started coming up with ideas of how I could create these really amazing experiences that I used to do in person at our other B&B and how I could do that without having anybody be in the same room together. And so we came up with the idea of these self-care kits. And when it was clear that we wouldn't be able to move forward with the bed and breakfast, I was like, well, anybody can use these kits. It doesn't have to be at a hotel. They can take them to their home. And it includes products by women-owned or diverse small businesses. And it comes with a full explanation and a guide on how to use the products and how to recreate a really innovative, exciting new wellness experience in your home by yourself. And we try to make it really simple and easy to understand so anybody can follow it. And then that was hard to get going retail because people always thought we were a subscription box. And so we pivoted.
Oh, yeah.
We pivoted and we sell those to corporates. So we now sell our kits for corporate wellness, and we help companies teach their employees how to create balance and find a better work-life balance so that they can be more productive at home and at work. And we customize those kits to whatever they need. It could be a company retreat. It could be wellness gifting. It could be a workshop that they want to do. And then we also have a retail line of aromatherapy products that are designed to teach people how to create self-care habits that are easy and sustainable. And the products are a physical reminder of to do that habit, because we all needed that little extra help. And they each come with a digital wellness guide to explain how to use the product and how to stack that habit and create those habits within your own life that you already have.
So were you using these while you were, shut down and rebuilding, from a burnout? Were you using this? Is that why you ended up saying, I know other people are going through the same thing?
Yes, exactly.
Not only because of what happened to you before, but also during COVID, it was a very difficult time.
Yeah, I actually, COVID for me came at the perfect time because I needed to rest, and I felt like that gave me the permission to rest because we were all stuck at home. So for me, actually, I thrived during COVID, getting to be home with my family and take that time to figure this new business out. But yeah, I was frustrated with what I saw online, on social media, about taking care of yourself at the time, because before COVID, I found it was all about spending money on yourself. And okay, go on an expensive vacation, get a gym membership. And at the time, I had very little money because after leaving a marriage, and I needed to do things that were easy, sustainable. I had a kid at home. I didn't have a ton of money. I had to work. I had to do all these things. Yeah, so that is where those easy, sustainable habits came from. It was things I knew from my background as a dancer with kinesiology training and movement therapy, and things that I pulled from my arts backgrounds. And when I had run a spa, I kind of put it all together. And a lot of the habits you already know, but we're giving you that permission to do it.
Right. And that's got to be a very difficult thing, is to allow people the permission to do it. So how do you even begin to talk about that with like corporates and because I mean, it's a big thing. They want to keep their employees, right? They want to keep them healthy. How do you even start those conversations with people to say, look, you need to do this before it happens. Like, I've lived through it, right? So you have the experience to say, exactly. I've lived through it. You go until you just can't go again. So why don't you try to do some preemptive work so that you don't burn out?
Exactly. Since COVID, though, it's been a pretty easy sell to a lot of the corporates that I have interacted with, because they've noticed the benefits of, letting people work from home, or having that hybrid situation, or, getting to take a break. So, I go into the pitch with, you don't know you need this yet, but as soon as you smell the products or read one of our guides, you're going to be like, yes, they resonated with it on an emotional level themselves. So then they're like, yes, I can see how my team can utilize this. And we've put all of our guides and products, and we've developed them in a way that they're going to appeal to the masses, or people who wouldn't necessarily get into wellness and and
Because
self-care.
I think that's again, wellness and self-care, it's like a woo-woo kind of thing, like when you think about it, right? So it's how do you even engage? So the company says, yeah, I'm really concerned about the wellness of my team, and I want people to look after themselves. How do you even start that when you start to teach, or here's what we're going to do? What are some of the, I guess, the strategies that you would use?
So I'll start with explaining our most popular product has ended up being our nasal inhalers. And it's like the perfect gateway into wellness because everybody that I have met so far associates it with a Vicks nasal inhaler, which
Oh, yes.
you get it at the drugstore.
Hmm.
In their mind, it's medicine.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I
So,
love those inhalers. I got to tell you, I
right?
love the Vicks
They're
inhalers.
amazing. They're
Yeah.
amazing. And so they're like, I know what this is. It's not hooey.
Right. Yeah.
It's a legit product. And so they smell it. They're like, okay, well, that smells good. Usually with a corporate, we do our late night bliss revive and thrive inhaler, which is peppermint and eucalyptus, and it wakes up the brain, but it also has some lavender and other things there that are going to help them calm their nervous system. And we teach them how to do just some easy breathing exercises, just some box breathing, and take some deep breaths. And we're like, notice the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Just notice the difference. And then from there, we just give them little tidbits, little tips that they could use, hydrate more, things that they know they should do.
Things we all know, but we never
Yeah,
do, right? You need someone to tell you
exactly.
and to be on you to make sure you're doing this.
Right. And just, go in there with a little of the science of why. Like, did you know it would do this for you? Or do you do this? And then they can go deeper by going into our digital wellness code. So they're going to get a written guide, but then they have QR codes all over that guide. So if they want to learn more about one subject, they can go deeper.
So the wellness is not just about aromatherapy, but it's also about physical.
We look at the 7 different types of rest. You're looking at physical rest, mental rest, social rest, creative rest, and using elements of all those different ones so that you can find balance, because you may be really good at taking care of your physical self and resting or moving, but maybe you're not so good at saying no to social engagements and you overextend yourself.
Right.
Right. So not everybody is going to have the same issue. So we try to give little tidbits that everybody's going to find something beneficial out of each guide, especially when we're working with a larger group of people.
Right. So you're taking your teaching experience
Yes.
plus, so you're taking out actually all the elements of what you've done over your lifetime
Yeah.
and said, look at, I've lived through this. I realize that I didn't look after myself and I don't want this to happen to you. And the corporate sell's easy, but this is really for anybody,
It is. It
right?
is.
And in a group setting, it's always fun if you're going on a work retreat or something like that you spend a half a day or a day on this, and then you spend a day working. So do you break that down in terms of, here's your work, if it's a conference, say, or a retreat for a corporation? Do you take it as a day, a half day, or is it all, again, custom based on what the corporation
So
wants?
it even goes beyond that. So they get a kit. Like, let's say it's a company retreat and they've created their own workshops and things. We create the kit that supplements everything that they're doing in that company retreat. And it's something that goes to the hotel room with them. It goes home with them after. And
Right.
it reminds them of what they've learned, because that's the biggest problem. It's really easy to do the things when you're in that situation, at that retreat, at that workshop, but how do you take that education home
Right.
and remember it all and remember to do it? That's what the kits are for. It's also designed for those introverts like me who hate getting up in front of the group.
Right. Right.
Right. I've learned to do it over the years because I have facilitated things, but I still get that like knot inside my chest if I would have to do an activity in front of people. Dance in front of 20,000 people, no problem. Get up in a room of 30 of my peers and do an activity still terrifies me. So this is something that those people feel more comfortable with. And we
Right.
really haven't geared things towards that
Making
subset.
them feel uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They were like, get up in front of everybody and do it. Well, here's another way.
So I think this is fascinating, and I love the story about how this sort of developed and what happened. But how do you actually balance? Because you said there's 4 companies that you and your parents um, run together. So how do you balance your role at Voda Retreats with the involvement in the other
Mhm.
businesses? How do you manage that? And how
It's
many? There's you, your parents. Is there any other siblings involved in the businesses?
no, it's me and my parents, and then my daughter who's 10 likes to say that she's going to come in,
Oh,
and she does come. She'll help me pack kits,
hmm,
and that's how she can sometimes earn an allowance, is come and pack kits or help me put labels on things.
yeah,
And
yeah.
she likes to do that. She's very artistically minded, so she's very good at keeping labels on straight, which is great. Um, but it can be a challenge because I have wanted to build a successful business without hustling and build it and burning out.
Hmm.
And our society is not built for that.
No.
It's hard. So one of the first things I did was build into my emails um, a little email that goes out every time saying, we practice self-care. I may not respond to you right away because I am not always on my emails.
I
And
love that. I love
that
that we practice self-care. I think that's great because we way too often, sorry to interrupt, but
I
way
know,
too often we're like answering emails right away.
right.
And sometimes I answer an email at the oddest times, but I don't expect a response because I'm
Exactly.
thinking about something, I got to write it out and send it to you. And then people respond. I'm like, oh, now I'm having a conversation at 10 o'clock at night. I didn't intend that to happen, right?
Yeah, I have that conversation with anytime we have employees or somebody working with us. I'm like, I'm going to respond, say, at midnight sometimes because that's when my creativity is going. Not every day, but I do not expect you to respond. I only expect you to respond within working hours,
Hmm.
right? But if
Yeah.
you're also a person who likes to work at night, power to you, and that's when you can do your stuff.
Hmm.
And we're lucky that we have the capability to allow for that. Um, Otherwise, it takes a lot of communication, a lot of like open communication about what each business needs.
Hmm.
Um,
Because there's 3 of you and 4 businesses. Like, how do you spread that around?
yeah, well, luckily we did shut down the private school last year, so that has kind of taken a load off everybody. Um, and one of the businesses is still in a more of a startup stage, so that doesn't really take a ton of our time. It's really between the two at the moment. But yeah, because before this, I'm over there making lunch for 70 to 80 children, and
Hmm.
then I come over here in the afternoon and do the rest of my work. And then I usually take a break so that I can hang out with my daughter when she gets off school to when she goes to dance. And then I'll work again while she's at dance.
Oh, right, right. So, what are some really good tips for entrepreneurs? Because I think as an entrepreneur, business owner, family business, you're right that we're just not set up to take care of ourselves. So, what are some of the tips that you would give to family businesses? Again, because when it's family business, you're talking to them all the time. It's not like you leave your employees
Yeah.
and go home, right? So I think family businesses are a little bit more challenging because of the dynamics then. So what are some tips for some of these family members to start to incorporate self-care into their daily routines?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's even harder when it's a family business.
It's
Um,
much harder. Everything is harder when
you
it's a
take
family
it, you take it
business.
everywhere. So, I mean, and I struggle to get my parents to practice this stuff.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because it's
It
hard,
is.
right? I mean,
And they're not of that generation.
no, no.
You
It
know,
was hard work, hard work. Put your head down, keep going.
exactly.
It's not understanding that work-life balance, and actually understanding what work-life balance is harder to actually achieve than it is to actually say it. And you're trying to get that bit of a balance. So again, sorry, back to the tips. What are some of the
Yes.
tips
I
you'd
mean,
give?
I think you need to schedule time where you're not going to talk about work, and you have to intentionally schedule it. Otherwise, you're going to just end up falling into the habit of, you know, anytime you're together, you're going to end up talking about work. And so we've had to say, we're not talking about work today.
Hmm. Hmm.
On the weekends, we don't talk about the daycare. That's for other things. unless, there's an emergency or something,
Right, right. And it's funny you say that, because that's one of the points as a family business advisor I'm saying to my clients all the time, the families, that you have to set boundaries around that. The dinner table is not the boardroom table.
Yeah.
And when you get together as a group, you tend to want to talk about business, but you're also excluding other people, because not everybody's involved in the day-to-day operations of the business or an owner in the business. And it becomes an uncomfortable, conversation where four people are talking and three are sitting there with nothing to, like, is this dinner going
Mhm.
to end? So I think that's great, because now I can say this is for self-care as well.
Exactly. It's for your
Right, because
mental
I try.
health and your social health. And,
Yeah,
you need to
yeah.
connect with people on a social level, doing things you like, not just work. Even though I'm sure most family businesses, especially the first generation, they love what they do. There's a
Oh, yes.
passion there.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it's hard to let it go. But
Because
yeah,
it's their baby, right? I mean, they
it's
they
pretty, yeah.
they built it, and that's their, their whole life's work is this particular business. But as a next gen, or spouses of next gen, or kids not involved in the business, it's a form of income. It's not their whole life. And we even talk about that with families, in that when you're together, say at Christmas or Easter, or whenever you have your family get-togethers, they actually schedule times. If you want to talk about business, you can talk about business between these hours, and maybe go to a different room. Like, you're gonna go to
Yeah,
the
that was,
den. You're
yeah,
gonna go to, this particular room if you want to talk business. You're gonna talk about it during that time only, and the rest of the time is spent with your family. Because if you were working for a company that, the other employees weren't around you over the
exactly.
holidays, you're not going to talk business with them. You might
Exactly.
talk about something, make a comment or something, but your whole time with your family is not talking about the business, because there's nobody else to talk about it with.
Yeah.
But you throw families in there and it becomes very complicated. So one tip, I love that. So that's a really great tip of, separating it. What are some other tips to actually start to incorporate self-care?
Well, to build on the boundaries, you need to learn to say no.
Hmm.
I think that, that's one of the first things I would tell anybody, is you need to practice saying no, and, not feeling guilty when you don't agree to do something. And that's really, really hard. I struggle with it a lot, because I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
But you need to take care of yourself first, and you need to learn to say no, and recognize that, yeah, there are some things that you can't necessarily say no to, but there are a lot of things that, if it just doesn't fit within, your set of goals, and it usually goes in, we usually get people to sit down and, like, write out their goals and their values. And
Hmm.
once you have your goals and your values, you then absolutely stick to those boundaries and say no to anything that doesn't fit within that. I mean, that goes for business, like, for your business, for you personally.
Yeah.
uh, then you're not trying to do it all the time.
Right.
That, and, be gentle with yourself, because you don't
Yeah,
need to
we're
do
we're our own worst enemies,
it. We
right?
are.
We're hardest on
Yeah.
ourselves. Um, so just when you're talking about, the boundaries and, values and goals, you've got a business now, your family's involved, but this is very different from what your family
Mhm.
business started out to be, which is childcare. And here you're in, still it's self-care, it's still care. How did your family, when you said you wanted to do this, what was the response? Were they worried that you were going to leave what you're currently doing? Because if they're all working together, how did that actually come about? I think that's fascinating. And this is what I love to encourage with our families, is that you might have a child who wants to do something different, but how
Mhm.
can you incorporate that into the whole family enterprise, right?
I think I was very vocal that I didn't want to teach my whole life and be with kids. Not that I didn't, or that I don't love kids and working with kids, but I was very vocal, about the fact that it was burning me out, and that I didn't want to do it anymore. So they kind of knew it was coming. Um, and I guess I'm very, very lucky that I'm able to communicate very well with my mother and my father, and they will listen, and they know my strengths, and I know their strengths and weaknesses. And so they were very open to it.
Yeah, that's very great to have a supportive family.
Yeah,
It's amazing because sometimes they're not supportive if you're deviating from the original business, right?
exactly. Yeah, and they are, and I'm just fortunate in that way that we were looking at how many, what other income streams we could have, and this is what I'm passionate about. And I'd always kind of, over the years had never always worked in the business full time. When it started, I used to do summer camps, but I still taught dance and did other creative ventures while still always working there. But I never fully stopped working in the business, and I was always there if they needed something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I think
Um,
I felt comfortable that I always had done that, so I always could do that.
oh, that's great. So what is the next step for this family enterprise that you've created with three companies? Now, what's the future look like?
Well, eventually my parents will want to step back from the day-to-day running of the daycare, and we're well on our way. We have a great assistant director, and then we'll be hiring a director 5-10 years down the road, so that they can step back. And then I know that my mom wants to then work more on her passion project, which is our other business, where she is developing what I think we talked about it last time, a video game to help kids learn to communicate again. Because
Mm-hmm.
since the advent of handheld devices, how people communicate has somewhat gone downhill. And
Absolutely.
she also works with SLPs and so to use this in their practices. So she is quite passionate about that. So I think that will be the next step, is for her to, once she gets a step back from the daycare a little bit, really push
Mm-hmm.
that out there into the world. And then we're looking to take Voda Retreats, which is my company, across Canada, and are already starting to look into other markets like Singapore, Asia, Europe, and see if we can take it worldwide. We have a lot of products that are great for travel. So we do work with Hudson here at the Halifax airport, and are looking to get in more airports really
Oh, yeah.
all over the world,
Yeah.
because my reasoning behind that is people are more willing to try new things when they travel.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah. It's
you
funny you
try
say
it as
that.
you're a kid.
Because I got this, one of the hotels I stayed at, they had a little note beside the bed, and it was a little lotion, a little oil that you put
Mhm.
on your
A
wrists
sleep
and
oil.
behind your ear to sleep, and I loved it. I
Yeah.
thought this was great, and now I have a bit of a habit to use it. So I mean,
Yeah.
again, I would never have gone out and found it.
You're like, ooh,
Yeah,
it's a luxury. I'm,
yeah. Oh, what's
spoiling
this little cool
myself,
thing? Yeah,
but I
yeah,
do like it. So, oh, well, maybe I'll add this into my routine. So that's was a venue that we thought would be a great way to get people into the idea of taking care of themselves all the time. Is you're going to do it
yeah.
when you travel. You're
Or
taking a
or at a
vacation.
conference or at a, a retreat. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Anyway, believe it or not, we're out of time again. How fast that goes.
Oh,
So, I like to end with three tips. And I kind of asked you about the tips for entrepreneurs and
mhm.
self-care to their daily routine. But let's take it back a step and say, what are your big three tips for family businesses and working together and expanding? Or just give me three tips that you would give to family businesses on any stream.
For expanding, it would be, find a mentor, find a family that's done it before, who you really like, and see, and try to connect with them and see how they did it. I would say that to anybody. If there's something you want to do, you go find the person who you think is modeling where you want to go, and connect with them. Um, to to
Yeah.
hopefully you're going to learn what to do and what not to do,
What to do.
and
Or
yeah.
like what not to do. I mean, that's always
Yeah,
the big
yeah.
thing, right? I've
Yeah,
been there, done it, don't do this
exactly.
again.
Yeah, so I think that's a big tip. And that and get out there and connect with other family businesses, maybe who are in a completely different field from you,
Mhm.
and just see what's possible.
I love that because I do think that family businesses are very unique, and
Hmm.
there's lots of organizations that are solely geared towards family businesses. I know in Canada we have a couple. We have one that's national, and you're part of one, I think, in the Atlantic Canada. And I'm part of some groups in Maine, some family business centers. So I think it's really important because you do have unique challenges. That's really great. And one last tip. Put you on the spot.
I just build in time for rest.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, we get so busy, eh? We never leave
Yeah,
ourselves time.
exactly. And as the family owned business, it's like you schedule even less time to rest for some
Absolutely.
reason. So yeah,
Yeah.
schedule time.
That's great. Thanks for those 3 tips. So how can they reach you? What's your email address or webpage?
Yeah. By email, it's just hello@vodaretreats.com. And our website, the same, vodaretreats.com. But you can also visit our blog and our podcast where we just post self-care tips.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
on our podcast, we simply have 5 to 10 minute meditations, movement activities, breathing activities that you can follow along with to find balance during your day.
Amazing. Well, we'll put those in the show notes for people who are listening and want to go get those tips. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.